This is the Grandma Johnson Scones demonstration video. Cooking principles. Cooking principle number 1. Type of quick bread using the biscuit method. The biscuit method. Step 1. Sift dry ingredients together. Step 2. Cut in solid vat with a pastry blender. Step 3. Add enough liquid ingredients to the dry ingredients to form a soft but not sticky dough. Step 4. Knead the dough to develop the gluten and create the layers. Cooking principle number 2. The consistency of unbaked crust is a soft dough, 1 part liquid ingredients to 3 parts dry ingredients. Nutrition. Simple carbohydrates. There are 3 types of foods that give your body energy. Next to proteins and fats, carbohydrates are one of the main sources found in most diets. During digestion, sugars, starches are broken down into simple carbohydrates. They absorbed into your bloodstream where they're known as blood sugar or blood glucose. There are simple carbohydrates and complex ones. Because of the use of refined white flour and sugar, we would classify this recipe as full of simple carbohydrates. Complex ones are usually found in high fiber foods and whole grains, such as whole wheat flour. Enriched flour has the 3 B vitamins, thiamine, niacin, and riboflavin, and iron added to it. Enriched grains have had the vitamins and minerals that were lost during storage, transportation, and processing added back in by the manufacturer. An example of an enriched grain is white flour. In Canada, white flour must be enriched with vitamins and iron, which means the manufacturer added those nutrients. However, enriched white flour is missing many of the nutrients and fiber that is found in a whole grain. B vitamins play a vital role in maintaining good health and well-being. As a building block of a healthy body, B vitamins have a direct impact on your energy levels, brain function, and cell metabolism. B vitamins also help prevent infections and promote good cell health. Iron is a mineral that your body uses to help make 2 proteins, hemoglobin and myoglobin. Hemoglobin helps your red blood cells move oxygen from your lungs to the rest of your body. Myoglobin brings the oxygen to your muscles. Iron is the most important in making hormones, as well as tendons, ligaments, and other connective tissue. Ingredients: 125 milliliters of sour cream. Sour cream will add the acidity needed to activate our baking soda leavening agent, as well as extra moisture to make our scones tender. 2 milliliters baking soda. Baking soda is a leavening agent that needs to be combined with an acidic substance to help create carbon dioxide gas that will help leaven our product. In this recipe today, it will be both the sour cream and the cream of tartar. 500 milliliters of all-purpose flour. Gluten is the protein found within flour that, when combined with a liquid, will form strong elastic strands. Heat from the oven will harden this protein, creating the structure of our scones. 125 milliliters of sugar. Sugar not only sweetens our scones today, but will help provide the golden brown color as it caramelizes in the oven. This color will only show up on edges only, as scones tend to be very pale. 5 milliliters of baking powder. Baking powder is a leavening agent that, when combined with a liquid, will help produce carbon dioxide gas that is needed to help leaven our scones. 2 milliliters of salt. Salt enhances natural flavors found within any baking product. Today's recipe is a choice of flavor, so it'll help bring out the flavors of either your raisins, craisins, or chocolate chips. 0.5 milliliters of cream or tartar. Cream or tartar is an acid in powder form that, when mixed with baking soda and a liquid, will create carbon dioxide gas needed to help leaven our scones today. 125 milliliters of butter or margarine. This solid fat acts as a tenderizer, for it interferes with the development of gluten, keeping our scones soft in texture. It will also help melt, creating pockets for the steam to flow through, creating the flaky layers that is typical in anything using the biscuit method. Half a large egg. Eggs not only contribute to the nutritional value of the scone, but also act as an emulsifier, bringing together two unlikely ingredients that would normally not like to mix. For example, in our scone recipe today, it will be our sour cream and our butter or margarine. 125 milliliters of raisins, craisins, which are really dried cranberries, or chocolate chips. This is the flavor choice that you and your partner will have to decide today for your scone recipe. These are all the ingredients found in the Grandma Johnson's scones. Equipment. For this recipe, you will need measuring equipment, dry measures, liquid measure, and small measures, metal spatula, custard cups, a metal spoon, a set of mixing bowls, including the small and large bowl, a sieve, a metal pie plate, a wooden spoon, a pastry blender, a metal fork, a rolling pin, a pastry mat, a dinner knife, a cookie sheet, oven mitts, hot mat, cooling rack, a lifter, Method. Step 1. Bachette stands for the beginning steps that you need to do at the start of your lab. B stands for books and bags. They should be away either at the back of the classroom or under your table. A stands for apron, which you need to put on to help protect your clothing. S stands for sleeves. You need to roll them up past your elbows. H stands for long hair that touches the shoulders that needs to be tied back, or hats that need to be removed. C stands for chairs that should be tucked under your table and out of your way. H stands for hands that should be washed properly for 30 seconds using hot water and soap. E stands for equipment, which you should be getting out as quickly as possible without wasting time. And T stands for the towels that you need to pick up. You need at least 2 dishcloths and 2 tea towels. Step 2. Use oven racks 1 and 3. Preheat oven to 390 degrees Fahrenheit or 199 degrees Celsius. It is a hot oven that allows a scone or a biscuit to quickly puff up, double its height, and harden into shape. To set the temperature of your oven, start by pressing the bake button, then, using the up and down arrows, select the temperature you desire. Step 3. In a small bowl, combine sour cream and baking soda, set aside. Combining these 2 ingredients together will automatically start creating the carbon dioxide gas reaction needed to leaven the scone. This is why we should work as quickly as possible to complete the recipe. Step 4. Sift flour, measure, and sift again into a large bowl. Sifting adds in air and helps get rid of lumps. Lightly stir in sugar, baking powder, salt, and cream of tartar. This is the first step of the biscuit method. We live on the west coast of Canada, right by the sea. Often you'll find our baking products very lumpy. Sifting helps ensure that we remove those lumps, creating a nice texture inside our scone. Once the flour is sifted, it is full of air. Gently scoop the flour again to make sure that you keep the air within your product. You might want to save the sifted flour to help roll out our dough later because it is lump-free. Now we'll sift the rest of the dry ingredients together. Doing this will ensure that the baking powder and the salt ends up in all parts of the dough evenly. Step 5. Measure butter or margarine using the water displacement method. The water displacement method is a perfect way of measuring hard fat like butter, margarine, or shortening. First, let's put 100 milliliters of cold water into the liquid measure. It is cold water so we don't accidentally melt our solid fat. Then, being at eye level, let's gently put our margarine and butter underneath the water line until it rises up to 130 milliliters. That will ensure that we have 30 milliliters of solid fat measured. When done, drain the water from the liquid measure and you're good to go to use our fat in our recipe. Step 6. With a pastry blender or 2 knives, cut solid fat into the dry ingredients to the size of small peas or coarse meal. This is the second step of the biscuit method. We need fat to form layers. The solid fat will melt between the flour layers, leaving spaces between the layers. Cutting in chilled fat into the dry ingredients is best done with a pastry blender. This can also be done by holding 2 table knives in each hand and cutting in a crosswise direction across the flour. As you cut the solid fat with the pastry blender, you might notice larger pieces start sticking into the wires of the pastry blender. You may use a metal spatula to help push that solid fat back through into the mixture. You will know when you are done when all the butter is in small little pieces that look almost the size of small green peas. It will look very, very even and fine. Step 7. Toss raisins, craisins, or chocolate chips into the dry mixture. A pro tip would be to rehydrate your raisins or craisins in the microwave for 1 to 2 minutes in a liquid measure filled with water before adding them into the dry ingredients. Rehydrating your fruit will allow them to fill up with moisture. This way, when they go into the oven as the final scone product, they will not dry out any further. Make sure you use a wooden spoon to gently toss them around in the flour mixture so they're evenly distributed throughout. Step 8. Beat egg. Add to the sour cream mixture. Gradually add sour cream mixture to the dry ingredients while tossing with a fork. Add enough liquid until the mixture clings together to form a soft dough. Some of the liquid might not be used. Do not overmix because gluten will become tough and heavy and the product will have poor volume. This is the third step of the biscuit method. Because you only need half an egg, let's start by cracking it on the surface of a countertop and breaking it into a custard cup. Then, using a metal fork, mix the egg up until the yolk is equally mixed with the egg white. Then, measure out half the egg. An egg is roughly 70 milliliters, so measuring out about 30 to 35 milliliters is perfect. Share the other half of the egg with the other partner group in your unit. When adding the liquid ingredients into the dry, gently toss with a metal fork. You should do this slowly until you see the dough start to come away from the sides of the bowl. It is very important we do not overmix this dough because it will become too tough activating the gluten, even though there is some fat and sugar in the dough. Make sure you try getting your hands into the bowl. Doing this will ensure that you combine your dry spots with some of the more moist spots. The dough should have a Play-Doh-like texture to it, soft but not sticky. Step 9. Knead dough gently about 8 to 10 times on a clean, lightly floured surface. To knead, fold the dough in half, push down with the palm of your hands and make a quarter turn. Repeat 7 to 9 times. Kneading will mix the ingredients, develop the gluten, and add air. This is the fourth step of the biscuit method. For a clean surface, I start by putting a pastry mat down onto the countertop. Using a pastry mat makes cleanup a whole lot easier, as well as uses less flour when rolling out your dough. My dough will look crumbly at first, but as I start kneading it, it will help incorporate all our ingredients together. Again, I'm going to fold the dough in half, push down with the palm of my hands, and make a quarter turn. You must knead the dough 8 to 10 times, ensuring that we have activated the gluten enough to hold its structure. We do not want to over-knead because that will create too much gluten development, causing a tough product. To check to make sure that my dough has finished kneading, I gently use my fingertip to see if the dough will spring back into shape when lightly pressed. That ensures that enough of the gluten has been activated. Step 10. Roll out dough into a 2 cm or 3/4 of an inch thick circle. Cut into 6 wedges. I first start by lightly adding some flour to the pastry mat, making sure I go underneath the dough. That way the dough will not stick to the pastry mat. Now, I also put some flour on top of the dough as well as on my rolling pin. Now, the habit for most students is to roll like they see people doing on television or in the movies. Rolling back and forth doesn't necessarily help shape our product. When we start to roll, we want to put our rolling pin into the middle of the dough and push the dough outwards. Then, change directions of the rolling pin, starting again in the middle of the dough and pushing outwards. Keep repeating that until you slowly have an even shape forming. I usually say to students that if you want to roll out a circle, you need to continually make it a circle. So carefully adjust the dough shape with your hands, keeping it in a circular shape. Continue rolling until you reach the 2 cm thickness. To cut the dough, use a metal spatula. A metal spatula does not have a sharp edge, and therefore you will not cut through the pastry mat. Gently divide the circle into 6 even wedges. They should be uniform in size to ensure that your baking time will be the same for each individual scone. Step 11. Place on an ungreased cookie sheet. Use a cookie sheet and not a jelly roll pan. This is needed to have even heat circulation. First, put the cookie sheet down on a clean countertop. Make sure there's no flour underneath or it will burn to the bottom side of the cookie sheet. A cookie sheet has no walls around all 4 sides, thus allowing air to flow evenly around. Using a lifter, gently lift up each individual scone and transfer onto the cookie sheet. Notice how I keep spaces in between each scone. The scones will rise quite rapidly and they need to have enough space to expand. If you need to, use your fingers to help reshape the scone so that they are uniform in size and shape. Step 12. Bake for 12 to 15 minutes or until golden brown on the bottom and edges. Remember to stagger the cookie sheets, one on the top right and the other on the bottom left. Switch halfway through the baking time. To set the time on the oven, start by pressing the timer on-off button. Then, using your up and down arrows, select the desired time needed. When the scones are done, place a hot mat down to protect the countertop from the heat of the cookie sheet. The hot mat may look small, but it is large enough to help lift it up off the surface of the countertop. Then, using a lifter, transfer the scones as quickly as possible from the cookie sheet to a cooling rack. The scones will continue to cook if left on the cookie sheet for a long period of time, for the cookie sheet is as hot as the oven. This recipe should make 6 scones if you are a group of 2, or 9 scones if you are a group of 3. Test for doneness. 1. Double in height. When scones are done, they are often double in height. They puff up quite quickly in a hot oven, rapidly forming layers. 2. Golden brown on bottom and edges. Scones are very pale. Not until you flip them over will you see this golden brown bottom. Standards. 1. Symmetrical in shape. All 6 scones should look roughly the same size. 2. Pale color with golden brown bottom and edges. Scones should be almost white with only a slight hint of golden brown coloring. 3. Double in height. Scones need to puff up rapidly in a hot oven and develop their layers to make a good quality product. 4. Tender and flaky texture. Scones often have a hard exterior, but on the inside lays lots of flaky, tender layers. Those are the standards of a good quality scone. Let's take a look at my scones made in our demonstration. I noticed that automatically I have double in height from when I first started to bake. You can see the layers have rapidly expanded. I flip over my scone and see a golden brown color, but it's quite pale on the outside. The outside exterior is tough, but you can feel that it's quite tender inside. That is how I know I made a good quality scone. The biscuit method can be used to make more than just biscuits. As demonstrated in today's recipe, scones are an excellent pairing for this method. Whether you like them with raisins, craisins, or chocolate chips, I'm sure this will be another recipe to add into your repertoire. Happy baking! Thanks for watching.